What's going on, you guys? Theo here with the big review, back yet again with another King of Fighters Allstar video, and today we are going to be doing one of the most anticipated character spotlights that I have had to do in a while. This is going to be the Boss Syndrome Krizalid character spotlight, where we will be going in and we will be breaking down Boss Syndrome Krizalid's kit, as well as his performance in all things PVE, from mobbing to normal bossing to guild raid to Immortals and more. So before we jump into all of that, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. So to start out here, I just want to give some kind of disclaimers before we get started, but overall my opinions of Boss Syndrome Krizalid are that he is a phenomenal unit. This, in my opinion, is going to be a must-have character, and if you are a person that needs any help whatsoever in some of the hardest difficulties in the game, for some of the hardest modes in the game, such as guild raid or the things like Immortals, this is a character that you are definitely going to want to consider. But why would you want him? Why is he so good? And why is he so important to your account? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Leading off with his kit, Boss Syndrome Krizalid is a yellow balance type with a leadership skill that increases boss fighters' attack by 60% and decreases their HP by 5%. Now, on the surface, one might assume that being a balance type and that balance types don't have a ton of support in King of Fighters Allstar, that this would work to Boss Syndrome Krizalid's detriment. However, thanks to the fact that he not only carries with him one of the strongest leadership skills currently available in the game, thanks to it being able to buff some of the best characters in the game, he also has the Boss Syndrome and Boss Fighter tags on his kit, so this allows him to slot into some of the best possible team comps that you can come up with for things such as Guild Raid and Immortals and the like. So therefore, being the fact that he is a balance type, he actually brings with him great mixed bulk for a character that does as much damage as he does. So overall, this only works to his benefit and is actually one of the nicer parts of his kit when you consider the fact that he is going to be able to pull off some of these solos and things such as Guild Raid, and in order to do so in difficulties such as Lunatic, he needs that mixed bulk. So overall, this is a very solid kit. So let's go ahead and talk about his cores. Now, as far as his cores are concerned, Boss Syndrome Krizalid has great cores for him. First up, he is going to have that 30% power charge rate increase, which is a big boon to his kit. It is going to be one of the reasons why he is able to do so well in Guild Raid, and it is something that he shares in common with Boss Syndrome Geese as well. Up next on his exclusive cores, he is going to have Cutting Edge. This is going to deal additional damage equal to 80% of attack to all enemies when attacking targets affected by darkness or starlight. This is a big part of the reason why Krizalid is very good at mobbing, and overall being able to deal an additional 80% of his attack to all enemies is a huge deal when you talk about different modes such as Reviving Hell's Dungeon if he's trying to be a mobber there, or in Time Attack. Next up on the same core, he has a PvP exclusive of when he's attacked, he disables the attacker's active skills for 3 seconds on a cooldown of 20 seconds. I don't think that you guys need me to tell you how good that is in PvP. Basically, when he's attacked, he's just going to disable your active skills for 3 seconds. So very, very, very cool that he has this. This is a core that is going to be devastating in PvP. Basically, you hit me, and then you can't do anything for 3 seconds, is basically what that equates to. Next up on owner of .70599, he is going to reset Desperate Moments cooldown upon landing End of Eden combo, and increases the target's damage received by 20% for 7 seconds on a cooldown of 18 seconds. So he does have a reset on his skills, as we have seen with many characters in the past. At this point, this is a benchmark of whether or not a character is going to be meta. Most characters anymore are going to have a reset somewhere in their kit, or at least the Boss Syndrome and the SS characters are normally going to have something akin to this. So this isn't anything surprising, and overall, being that he is increasing the target's damage received by 20%, very, very, very good core. Next up, he is going to have the exclusive Boss Syndrome Volume 2 cores, which he will share in common, obviously, with his counterpart in Nightmare Geese. But the Boss Syndrome Volume 2 core does differ from the Volume 1 core quite a bit. This one is going to decrease all enemies' power by 1% every 0.3 seconds while in guard. So instead of increasing his own power gain, he is going to decrease the power of the opponent. So overall, this isn't something that really comes up in PvE ever. This is more of a PvP core, but very nice for him in that instance all the same. Next up, he does have a PvP exclusive on the same core that is going to give him super armor for 2 seconds when accumulated attack received, guard included, reaches 5 times. So basically, if you're trying to juggle him, he is going to gain super armor for 2 seconds, so this will be a good save for him, so it makes it a little bit tougher to be able to combo him down. So that is going to be the cores. Next up, we will move on to the skills. Now, Krizalid is a Boss Syndrome character, so he is going to have that extra time on his Awakening rotation, which is one of the reasons why these Boss Syndrome characters are so broken in PvE. Now, next up, moving on to his actual skills. On his S1, he is going to have his Hyper Armor for 3 seconds. He is going to increase his penetration by 1,000 for 7 seconds, and this is also going to be an interrupt. So overall, this is a very good skill. This is the one that is going to shoot him forward, so it has very, very good range, and when we go into the skill breakdowns, you'll be able to see that. Therefore, being that this one has the hyper armor on it and an increase to the penetration, and it is also going to be an interrupt, this is the perfect lead-off skill, being the fact that you are increasing and giving yourself that damage shred with that penetration, and also giving yourself that damage immunity. Next up on End of Eden combo, this is going to be decreasing the damage received by 80% for 3 seconds to Krizalid, and also deal radiant damage for 7 seconds upon a hit, which for those of you who are not aware of what radiant damage is, this is going to be the upgraded version of Starlight, so he is going to apply Starlight damage equal to 35% of attack every 1 second, and increases his damage received by 15% to his opponent. So very, very good. Radiant damage is very, very nice overall. So again, this kit, very, very tight. Next up, finally on his S3, he is going to apply Blackout, which for those of you who do not know, Blackout is going to deal darkness damage equal to 30% of attack every 1 second and decrease power by 2%. He also increases his own attack by 30% for 7 seconds and disables the target's roll for 3 seconds upon a successful attack or a guard. So really, being the fact that Krizalid, you can now see why he is so good in both Expert and Lunatic difficulties of Guild Raid. He is going to have the superior version of not only Starlight, but also Darkness. So overall, this kit is extremely powerful and should not be taken lightly, and there is a reason why I recommend him as highly as I do. Now finally, there is one final aspect of his kit that we need to talk about, and that is as far as his 3PG card is concerned. You will notice that it does have an effect on it, which increases his penetration by another 700 for 10 seconds when using Lightning Disaster. So overall, his penetration game is very, very good, and this is just another little perk to his kit. Now finally, as far as the stones are concerned, because everybody is always wondering about those, obviously you want to go with the BS Volume 2 stones, and you want to go straight attack. So let's go ahead now and break down his skills in detail. Boss Syndrome Krizalid has a 4-hit basic string combo where the first hit will connect with a downed opponent but does lack off-the-ground capability, so unfortunately Boss Syndrome Krizalid does not have a reliable way of off-the-grounding his opponent with his basics, as they will have a window of opportunity to stand after that initial connection when on the ground. Now, as far as his S1 is concerned, this is a very fast full-screen off-the-ground skill that will swap Krizalid and his opponent to opposite sides of the screen after it is finished. So one of the things about Krizalid that is kind of his niche is being able to grab and swap places with his opponents, and you see that as something on, not only just on his S1 but also on his S2, which is going to apply that radiant damage. Now this is also an off the ground, however it is not a full screen and will be able to reliably connect from about 3 character lengths away, so keep that in mind. It does have very deceptive range on it, and it is something that if you are not paying attention to, you can potentially miss and whiff on. Next up on his S3 is going to be his application of the blackout on his kit that is going to be his bread and butter for Expert Guild Raid. This is going to be a slow-moving projectile with a very good XY axis and will connect on the ground. However, do keep in mind with the S3 that whenever it connects with an opponent, it is going to stop at that opponent, so it will not face through them and continue past them. So overall with the skills, his juggles are phenomenal in his awakening rotation, especially considering the fact that he has that extra time as a Boss Syndrome character on the awakening rotation. So overall, very, very good. When it comes to his finishers, however, this is where he falters just a tad. While his card finisher is very good and does have that penetration increase and is very strong against things such as Omega Rugal's shield in Guild Raid, it is a short animation window, so keep that in mind. It is not going to be ideal for Immortals, but when we get to the Immortal area of this spotlight, we will go into more detail on that. However, all those things being said, his core finisher isn't very good. It is going to be a grab, and while that isn't the end of the world, it is going to make it less than desirable. But even then, with these little things that are working against him, Krizalid is able to pretty much just ignore many of these issues based on the fact that he is so quick and so reliable for damage that it really doesn't make a big difference for him at the end of the day. While on the surface it may seem as though a lot of these things would be the kiss of death in specific modes, they really don't hold him back in a measurable way, and he's able to kind of power through them just based on sheer raw power. So next up, we're going to go ahead and talk about Boss Syndrome Krizalid's mobbing. And when it comes to his mobbing, he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve here. However, some of them can be a little bit tricky for you as well as the person wielding him. So keep in mind with him, his skills can at times split mobs, and this can make him somewhat unreliable in things such as time attack, where you want to make sure that you are as efficient as possible with your skills. Now, it isn't going to be something that you are going to notice all the time. However, it is going to be something to note because, as you can see in this footage, every once in a while his XY axis will let him down just a tad and he will split a mob. But with his damage output, he is able to thankfully obliterate most anything that he connects with fully. So if you are able to connect with a mob with any of his skills, typically he is just going to delete them off the map. And thanks to this, in modes where you are going to be trying to beat the clock, such as Reviving Hell's Dungeon, Boss Syndrome Krizalid boasts the ability to be one of the few characters in the game that can start a Reviving Hell's Dungeon mode level and then finish a Reviving Hell Dungeon mode level. So thanks to the fact that his awakening rotation is so good when it comes to his skill juggles and his damage output, as you can see in this footage, he pretty much is just going to bully any normal boss that is susceptible to grabs and just toss them around the screen, as I mentioned with the skill overview. And as you'll see here, this poor Lolly Chang, she just has no chance whatsoever against this character, as he just goes to town and tosses her all over the place. So yeah, when it comes to this character, he is a lot of fun to play, and really I highly recommend just messing around with him in things such as time attack when he's available, just to get a good feel for him, because it can be very rewarding to play with him. Now, as far as PVAI is concerned, we've talked about this in the past, but PVAI is largely meme tier. As long as you're paying attention in PVAI, you're typically not going to have much of a problem getting through it. Now, Boss Syndrome Krizalid, however, does fill a bit of a niche, as in League for balance weeks, he is going to be very powerful there, and honestly is probably going to be one of, if not the best characters possibly to pick during those weeks. So he has a lot of value in PVAI, but I really do think that honestly any competent character is going to be fine in this mode. So there's really not a whole lot to be said here other than the fact that he is going to go in and do a phenomenal job. So next up, we are going to talk about the mode that everybody, I'm sure, wants to talk about when it comes to this character, and that is going to be Guild Raid. So it is no secret, we already know how strong Boss Syndrome Krizalid is in Guild Raid, Lunatic and Expert respectively. This character is one of the only characters in the entire game that is entirely capable of soloing both Expert and Lunatic by himself, playing all three roles unto himself and being able to give you reliable 3 key clears for both of those modes on a daily basis. Now, one thing that is lost in that capacity that a lot of people don't take into consideration, and I know that I talked about quite a bit at length the other day when I did that video spotlighting him in Guild Raid, but this character is going to be an extremely good quality of life upgrade for any account, being the fact that Guild Raid tends to be a bit of a grind, and if you're somebody that is going for your trophy clears, trying to get, 7, 8, 900 million damage, that can take you forever in order to get through those. But with Boss Syndrome Krizalid, while he isn't going to be hitting those types of damage numbers by himself, if you want to just use him solo, there are a lot of perks to doing so. The main reason obviously is going to be the fact that once you have him, if you have enough memories and you get him to at minimum awakening level 3 in order to unlock the stones, he is able to go through these 2 modes and be able to give you these 3 key clears each day, meaning 2 keys for Lunatic and 1 key for Expert. So that is going to be something that is going to save you a ton of resources, because you don't have to necessarily worry about building up 2 other characters to place on a team with him, being the fact that he can do it all by himself. And if you're somebody that isn't worried about those trophy clears, which honestly you're not in competition with anyone, so it really doesn't matter at the end of the day whether you're doing 500, 600 million damage or 7, 8, 900 million damage, when you really consider the fact that you have 4 keys to play with anyway. So if you're somebody that wants to simplify your life in this mode, honestly, this is your best bet, because if you do use him here, you can clear these Guild Raid runs in about half the time that it would take you to do it with a full team of characters, and that to me alone makes him worth the price of admission, because this game already has a problem with the time dump, and we've talked about the fact that the key system is a little bit truncated and outdated. It honestly needs to go, and they just need to allow us to be able to use all of our clears at the same time, so we don't have to wait for that 6-hour timer. It can be a huge grind for this mode. So honestly, I do recommend him as a solo character in that capacity, but that isn't to say that he doesn't slot in and do phenomenal with a team, because honestly, if you're somebody that does love your trophy clears, you can use him with a full team, and I've already seen this character with a team of, say for instance, Nightmare Geese and Omega Rugal go in and do more than 1 billion damage in a single run. So that pretty much tells you all you need to know about this character in Guild Raid. In my opinion, he is the premier Guild Raid character. I think that if there is one character in this game that is a must-own for the Guild Raid as a mode, it is this character, and it is for all of the reasons that we've already outlined here. Now, is he perfect in this mode? Well, no. His finishers aren't necessarily going to be perfect for this. However, they do tend to be better than people like to think, because that card finisher is going to shred that shield so quickly. It is almost, but not quite, on par with Merlin's shield shred with her finisher, and also with his core finisher. While it is a grab, it is nowhere near as bad as you might think in this mode, and you can actually use it to your benefit as well. So his game in this mode, I really don't think that there are a lot of holes in it, and you could sit there and nitpick him just like you could nitpick any character in any mode, but honestly, I have never seen a character that has been able to outright break a game mode such as this one. And with that being said, you really can't ask for any more out of him. If he were any more powerful and had a long finisher and all these different things with his card, then honestly this character would just be a little too much, because as it sits right now, he already kind of feels like he is, and feels like he's a little unfair in Guild Raid. I don't know necessarily that this was intended on their part over at Netmarble. You know, it's very odd to me that they would release a character that could do these types of things and outright break a game mode like this, but hey, if they're going to release it, we'll go ahead and use it, right? So moving on now to Immortals. Now, Immortals are going to be one of the more controversial topics with this character, because on the surface, people might assume that Boss Syndrome Krizalid may not be the best for this type of mode. However, in my short time with him and the fact that we've only had one Immortal to play around with, that being obviously Immortal Typhoon, I can say with a lot of confidence that this character may end up proving everybody wrong in this capacity, because as you can see from this run, while yes, I am using Boss Syndrome Geese and Boss Syndrome Omega Rugal alongside of him, that is going to be kind of a normal team for this character. In my opinion, you are probably going to be using him alongside Geese in a lot of scenarios in PvE, and with that being said, I think that based on this footage here, you can tell that this character is a lot better than people might want to give him credit for. While yes, he does have the same issues that we've already mentioned with his finishers being very short animations and the fact that he does have grab skills on his kit, this character does so much damage so quickly and is able to fire off his finisher so often that, to be honest with you guys, when I used him in this mode, he was a joy to use and honestly did really, really well. So at this point, I would say that it's inconclusive how he is going to fare against the rest of these Immortals, but with his leadership skill being as good as it is, and having the tags that we've already talked about as being a boss syndrome and a boss fighter, he is going to slot in against these Immortals with some of the best characters in the game. So I think that that might honestly prove to be all that really matters for him, but that is going to be him and Immortals, like I said, a little bit inconclusive until we have more time to test him against various ones. But let's go ahead and give our final thoughts on this character. In the end, Boss Syndrome Krizalid isn't without his faults. Yes, he is predicated upon grabs, so therefore he is not going to be ideal against specific bosses. And yes, he does have short animation lengths on his finishers, and being the fact that his core finisher is also a grab, these are all things that are going to work against him in a big way, and they aren't things that you shouldn't consider whenever you're thinking about picking this character up. However, with all of that being said, with Boss Syndrome Krizalid's strengths being so superior to his weaknesses, I have to recommend this character to anyone who is considering pulling for him, because to be honest with you guys, I think that this character is going to be relevant for a very, very long time. Rarely do we see a character released that outright breaks a game mode such as this character has done with Guild Raid in particular, and I really think that that alone is reason enough to pull for him. As I already mentioned in the Guild Raid part of this video, this is a much cheaper investment than an entire team where you will need characters such as Omega Rugal, SS Mai, Delens, Athena, all these different characters that are no longer available in order to ideally get through Lunatic and Expert respectively. So I think that if you're somebody that really wants to start grinding R-stones in Guild Raid on a reliable basis, that this is the character you have to consider. Now, you can try and put together different team comps and do it on a budget with things from the Unified banner, but they are all going to pale in comparison to just this one character. So if you're looking to do things on the cheap and save yourself a lot of resources in the process, then you can try your hand at the RNG on the Boss Syndrome Volume 2 banner and go for this character. If you're somebody that needs just another great addition to your championship lineup that you're probably going to see banned outright every time you try to use him, he is also going to be that for you. Really, there are very few gaps in his game, and at the end of the day, my recommendation to you guys, at least try to get him to Awakening level 3 if you can get all those stones, and he will get you very, very far in PvE content. So that is going to be today's spotlight, guys. We will be back with a spotlight for Geese Howard later on, as well as the spotlight on the new card set. But if you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Continue. Game over.